All videos on this channel are intended for adult Star Wars enthusiasts. Hello and welcome to Star Wars Obsessed, where I talk about anything Star Wars. I'm Richard, and this time we're going to talk about the Rise of Skywalker. And Gary's going to join me, and we're going to talk about it. Yay! We recently saw the Rise of Skywalker, and what did you think of it?
As an overall thing, I enjoyed the movie, but I was disappointed.
Disappointed as in thumbs down disappointed, or would you recommend it disappointed?
Well, I would still see the movie, and I'd even see it again, but it's not the... I'm disappointed that they did not continue with the fresh story that I was hopeful that they would come up with from The Last Jedi. I feel like they spent more time trying to appeal to the fanboys than giving us a fresh movie.
And that was the thing, that it felt like they were trying to check off a list of things that they needed to be sure to cover. And as I'm watching this movie, I was like, oh, okay. Oh, there's that. Oh, there's that. Check, check, check. Nostalgia. Feeding that nostalgia is what they tried to do. It's a fast-paced movie. I would recommend the movie. It's still fun. Mm-hmm. It has some great moments.
They definitely do tick off the things that you want to see.
It doesn't wrap everything up, but I do like how it's ended. Although, how it ends, I don't really see much difference than how Return of the Jedi ended. It's a bigger version of the ending of Return of the Jedi, but it's still kind of the same thing when you think about it. So we're going to go more deeper into the movie, and from here on, it's like big time spoilers, okay? So here's your warning.
The thing that I really, and if you go back and watch our video talking about the Last Jedi, the thing that I really respected about what Rian Johnson did is created this idea that DNA wasn't important, that the Force could happen in a lot of people, and it meant that for anybody who's watching the movie, especially for children, it could be aspirational, that you could be a hero. You didn't have to have DNA. It's not a King Arthur legend where you had to be a Pendragon, right? You, the common person, any common person could be a hero. And that was really amazing and empowering. And J.J. Abrams kept saying, oh, no, we're not going to retcon anything. We're not going to retcon anything. And I kind of feel like this is like a partial retcon.
Yeah.
And I have a reason why, after having talked to somebody else, why it may not be a retcon.
Well, I think that Rian Johnson's message I think his message was strong in The Last Jedi.
And now it's been weakened.
Well, not necessarily, because it still had the regular people being heroes. You know, the people that don't have a lineage, they were still heroes in The Rise of Skywalker. And then they had the thousands of heroes that came in to help out. But I think your focus is on Rey specifically. But I think Rian Johnson's message still carries over to The Rise of Skywalker, in that regular people like Poe and Finn and all of them, they're just regular people. They don't have a lineage, and they were still heroes.
But I'm talking about the specialized heroes. So like in the case of like a King Arthur legend, you have the knight, the knight, right? And you have that mythology, the hero, even in the Greek mythology, which is where ultimately Lucas started from, right? And I like that idea. And so Rey is our hero, even though the other ones are heroes too. Rey, for this story, for this cycle, is our core hero. Lovely fireworks. The deal is that, here's that spoiler, she is the granddaughter of Palpatine. So the reason she has all the powers that she has, and the reason she can be this great hero, is because she comes from a great Force user. And I use the word great, not meaning good.
And that explains why she has so much power.
Right.
So it helps to explain that, at least.
Yeah.
You know, that from The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi, why is she so strong with the Force? Why is she able to already wield a lightsaber and be quick about it? Well, She's the daughter of Palpatine, so... Granddaughter of Palpatine, so... that's your explanation.
Now, I'd like to throw a shout out to Mr. Raymond, a teacher I work with. He's the reason I now feel that it's more of a partial retcon and not necessarily a full retcon, because he saw something in The Force Awakens that kind of tipped him off. Now, he actually studied sword fighting, and so he knew to recognize it, and what he noticed about Rey in The Force Awakens and even in The Last Jedi is that her fighting style is very similar to that of Palpatine, and apparently in all of the Star Wars movies, each of the characters has a unique fighting style. So the fact that first we have the fact that she has this great force power, which is like Palpatine since he was a great force user, and couple that with having a similar, maybe inherited fighting style, and intuitive, especially if there's a force link, right, between grandfather and granddaughter, she might have inherently picked it, which would explain why she naturally seemed to know how to fight, right?
Yeah.
So if he's right, that's where he saw that, and that was a pretty impressive catch and helped make me feel less of a retcon than I previously was thinking all day. Thank you, Mr. Raymond. So another issue with the Rise of Skywalker and the Force Jedi kind of being retconned is Luke's lightsaber, which was destroyed in the first one and the Last Jedi, and then it's magically fixed and it looks good as new.
Yeah, it would have been nice if they had said something about repairing the lightsaber, but they didn't even talk about it at all. It was just already repaired. Like I said, it looked brand new.
Yeah. No acknowledgement that it had been a part of a fight, that it had to be repaired.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could be saying that they don't want to treat the audience as dumb, but it's like, why would we just assume that
I guess they're just saying that. You be smart, assume that they repaired it. I know that Jedi can build their own lightsabers, but can they put a lightsaber that's been, broken in half? Can they put it back together and smooth it out and make it look like nothing has happened to it? Like,
I know they should have left at least some sign that it had that wear and tear, so we can at least have that emotional reckoning that it had been damaged and needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
And we get later, because we know that Leia makes her own lightsaber, that Leia obviously knows how to do it. Yeah. So she's able to teach Rey, and so it would make sense that they would be able to fix it, but would it look that perfect?
Yeah. And since he mentioned it, there is an amazing scene when Rey decides to go back to, forgetting the name of that island.
Oh, Ahch-To.
He goes back to she goes to Ahch-To, and she decides she's gonna hide there, and then Luke's Force ghost appears and talks to her, and basically tells the story of how he trained Leia. And there's this scene that they show where young Luke and Leia, are battling with their lightsabers, and I absolutely love that scene. And I actually got choked up, and I cried a little bit because I thought it was an amazing scene, and it's wonderful validation for the Last Jedi, where we see Leia using her Force powers in space. And people are like, what is this all about? But here we have an explanation. If people just, we're patient, because this is a 3-part story. It's a trilogy, right, and revolving storyline, story arcs. It was a wonderful scene. I love that one.
And there's one area where definitely, I know J.J. Abrams had said that he wanted to try to tie up things that go all the way back to the beginning. And so for me, the beginning is the original trilogy. And that definitely was an open-ended statement. Not that needed to be explored, but it was great that it got explored and that we got a clear definition of Leia's powers. Oh. Leia's ability to use the Force.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. She, like Luke, are twin daughters of a powerful Force user.
Yeah.
So if we're saying that the granddaughter of Palpatine has these great powers, then why wouldn't both Luke and Leia have strong Force powers?
Exactly. Makes a lot of sense to me. I had an issue with the Return of Palpatine. It felt contrived because there was no hint of it at all.
In The Force Awakens.
In The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. It just felt like fan service. One of my problems with having Palpatine return, it feels like it diminishes what happens in Return of the Jedi. That Anakin Skywalker, when he basically has his redemption arc, throws Palpatine over. We thought killing Palpatine, and then he dies. But it didn't. So now they're saying in this movie that it didn't work. That Anakin's sacrifice was for nothing. Basically the same. This is what I'm talking about. The same thing happens in The Rise of Skywalker, where
the young apprentice,
where we have Rey confront Palpatine, and then there's the battle overhead. Whereas in Return of the Jedi, there was the battle in space, and Luke is on the Death Star with Darth Vader and Palpatine. Where in this case,
it's a little more epic.
They're on a planet, and you got Palpatine, Rey,
and a fleet,
and Kylo Ren, and then the fleet is overhead, and they're battling up there, while Rey, Kylo Ren, and Palpatine are battling on the ground. So it's kind of like the same thing, and it feels like fan service. It feels like, oh hey, remember this happened in Return of the Jedi, and we're kind of like doing the same thing. You know, wasn't that cool? But now we're going to make it bigger and more spectacular. And speaking of spectacular, just kind of like a side note here, we went to see the movie in a Dolby theater, so it has really great big booming sound, and the theater reverberates and the chair vibrates, and there's a scene where Palpatine's force lightning comes out of his hands, and he just goes like this, and it goes up like this, but when it does that, it felt like the whole theater exploded. It was an amazing feeling. And then when Rey has her lightsaber like this to block the force lightning, and then she grabs a second lightsaber and then slaps them together, we get another reverberation in the theater, which is like a boom, and go out like that. It was so cool. Back to that whole Palpatine.
I have mixed feelings on it. In the idea that you are summing up this saga, right? The 9 movies. The idea that you start with him as the key person who provides all the machinations through both the first trilogy and the second trilogy, then it kind of makes sense that if he's the big bad from 1 and 2, that he would need to be the big bad for 3, because it's like they've kept it for 1 and 2, so why would it be different for 3? I kind of feel like maybe we should have predicted that. But at the same time, you kind of want a fresh story, and it's like you're rehashing just on a more epic scale. So I have conflicted feelings on this one. I like it, and I don't like it at the same time for both of those reasons. Something I thought was really interesting was because one of the stories that we got in the original trilogy, and then what was told to us in the prequel trilogy, is this: we kept getting this message about balance. You're going to bring balance to the Force, right? So Anakin is going to bring balance to the Force, and then Luke is going to bring balance to the Force. And now, so we start with Anakin, then his son, and then his grandson, Kylo, right? And then we come to find out that Kylo kind of does, in essence, when it's said that he's got this, I want to say it was called dicord. They kept mumbling the word every time somebody said it, that I have no clue what the actual word was. I believe it was dicord, which kind of sounds interesting. But that both Kylo and Rey, both having ties to basically good and bad, are these dicord. They're these two things that basically together created the opportunity to finally destroy the Sith. I don't know how much that is also balanced because you're wiping out the bad.
And that's the problem is in the prequels they kept talking about the balance in the Force. But there's still no explanation what the balance is. Wiping out all the Sith.
Wouldn't that be an imbalance?
That would be an imbalance. And then they basically wiped out the Jedi. So there's no Jedi and no Sith. So what is the balance? A notion was that there's a gray area. Not Sith, not Jedi, but a gray area that shares both sides. The notion I had heard, it's not something I came up with, this balance should have been called Skywalker.
As a title.
That's the balance of the Force. It's not the dark side, not the light side, it's Skywalker. And that would have been great if they had touched on that and covered something like that.
And that would have given us a closure. And they could have still done it without...
They would have closed that question.
And
from the prequels.
They could have done that instead of choosing to have her pick the name Skywalker as the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have changed the story arc. The story arc would have been the same. Just have that little notion at the end that a little bit of dialogue, just that little bit that we're going to take a middle path. And we'll call this the Skywalker. You'd have had that where she got the Force healing from Kylo, so she's taken on his life force, right? So again, this dicord has created this one whole. She's healed him, he's healed her. So she represents this really now this true middle area, right? Instead, again, J.J. Abrams, who likes to leave questions open, has done so again.
Another thing is we saw the Knights of Ren, but we really didn't get much of the Knights of Ren.
We just know that they exist.
They don't really do much.
They fight Kylo.
They ultimately fought Kylo and lost. We saw the Sith Troopers. They weren't really much in the movie.
No, that's true.
They were towards the end because they were on the Sith planet. And we had to wait until everybody got to the Sith planet before there was a huge battle. They were fighting the Sith on the Star Destroyers, but that's basically the only place they were. Unfortunately, before they could finish filming, Carrie Fisher passed away. So they're trying to figure out what to do with Leia. And they did a great job. They had to figure out a way to explain why there's no more Leia, I guess, in the movie. So what they did is basically she used all of her Force energy, her Force power, to help turn Kylo Ren back to Ben. And that basically created the passing of Leia. And it was so well done. And they had to basically figure out ways to film it. Some of it did not have Carrie Fisher, so they used shadow. And it was so tastefully done, and it was brilliant.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
I'm also curious if Carrie Fisher had not passed away, if the story would have progressed like it did. Like, would she have still given her life to help turn Kylo Ren to Ben? Would that still be part of the story?
Well, from one of the interviews that was given, because I did read all the spoilers to help keep Richard away from them, because I'm a good doting husband. One of the articles actually did talk about how this was supposed to be Carrie Fisher's movie.
Yeah.
And so she would have had a strong story arc. So I imagine that they probably still would have had her sacrifice herself, because they did kill off Luke. They killed off Han. They probably would have still killed her off to move the story, to move the new characters forward in the universe. But it would have still been a sacrifice. I mean, a grand sacrifice. Still, I think very much like what they still chose to do.
Yeah.
At least I'd like to believe that. I thought it was interesting that, if I remember correctly, that she was holding when she was in the bed, she was holding onto the metal that would ultimately go to Chewbacca.
Oh, I missed that. I didn't even notice.
I could be wrong, but I could have sworn it looked like she had that in her hand. What I thought was interesting was how, was it Rose? Rose ultimately gave it to Chewbacca.
No.
No, not Rose.
It was the lesbian.
Oh, okay. The blonde woman.
Yeah.
So she gives Chewbacca the medal, and I feel partially bad because it's like Leia should have given it to him. She shouldn't have been holding on to it all this time, and I'm certain, we're both certain that had Carrie Fisher been alive, they would have intended for that to have been fixed.
It would have been a scene where she'll always be Princess Leia to me.
Yeah.
Where Leia would have actually given the medal to Chewbacca. That's what we're surmising.
Yeah.
Well, they couldn't film it, so they had a different character give it to Chewbacca. And that was one of the check off on the list of nostalgia or pleasing the fanboys, is that Chewbacca finally got his medal. Let's go down the list of some of the things that they were like, that it felt like they were checking off. Let's make sure this is in the movie to please the fanboys. The Death Star, although how the Death Star got on this planet.
They didn't explain what planet it is, unless we missed that.
I think they gave the name of the planet, but I don't think it was Endor. So I'm assuming that the parts of the Death Star were floating in space for a long time and ultimately went into the gravitational pull of a planet and landed. That's the only thing I can think of.
Or a different moon of Endor.
The other thing that they basically had Han Solo say, "I know," again. This time to Kylo Ren, or Ben.
How they made the throne room of the Death Star still intact.
I noticed that they put the radar dish back on the Millennium Falcon. It's not the square one. It's got the round one again. Oh, and then they played the chess. Oh, and Wedge.
Humanoid.
Wedge appears.
Oh, yes. So there's your another
in the final battle. He appears in the final battle, just like in Return of the Jedi. We got to see the Lars homestead. We got to see Cloud City, and we got to see Ewoks. The Star Destroyers were all falling, and so what they did was to basically give a nod to the original trilogy. Is we see a Star Destroyer falling near Cloud City,
and a Star Destroyer.
The Empire Strikes Back, and then we see it blowing up over the moon of Endor, and we see the Ewok. So Return of the Jedi. And then Rey goes back to Tatooine to the Lars homestead. The Rise of Skywalker ends basically where the whole saga begins. I loved how they ended the movie.
And the ghosts of Leia and Luke.
And Rey basically taking on the name of Skywalker. It is a great ending. And she looks out into the sunset, the two suns, just like Luke did.
And they definitely touched on a lot of the humor that is typical of Star Wars.
There's a lot of humor.
Especially with C-3PO. He got a lot of humorous lines.
Yeah.
It was interesting with the little droid, the new one.
Dio.
What is he?
Dio.
Dio
is cute, and he was pivotal to the story.
Yeah, because he actually had information.
Had information that they needed.
And it was interesting because, he had information not necessarily because somebody programmed him to be like R2-D2 was. He had information just because he happened to actually be part of the party.
On a ship that they needed to get to a certain place, and the droid happened to be there. But that's one of the things about this movie. There's a lot of conveniences. This droid happens to be on this ship. Or like when they're on that desert planet, and then they sink through the ground. And then, oh look, there's this ship that...
And there's the body.
And there's the body. Oh, they just happen to fall there. And
there's the injured snake that she gets to show off that she has this power that's going to basically foreshadow what she's going to do later.
Yeah, exactly. And then they go to another planet where they needed to get to reprogram C-3PO. And a friend of Poe's happened to be there, and she happens to have this coin that they're able to get off the planet without any problems. It's just like... Too convenient.
It's interesting that J.J. Abrams has his people that he likes to hire. So it's like, I forget, I think he's Scottish. The one who was on Lost and was one of the Hobbits.
Yeah. They really did not need that character. Like, all of the lines that they gave to him could have gone to Greg Grunberg, who had already been in The Force Awakens. And so, rather than giving those lines to him, they give it to this whole new character that was really insignificant to the story anyway. And they could have been more to the Snap Wexley character. I wanted to talk about this. I mentioned it, but I want to go back to it. But there is gay representation, finally, in the Star Wars universe. Very brief and very safe. That's the word. Safe. And I say it's safe because it's lesbians. And that's the safest gay representation that the studios can do. Because
men do not feel threatened by lesbians as much as they feel threatened by gay men. Which is sad because the writing they did for Finn and Poe in all 3 movies, even in this movie, would have been a natural relationship between Finn and Poe. And we know that Isaacs and Boyega both lobbied to have the characters be in a relationship together, and that they were basically rejected on that. Despite the fact that they wrote 2 characters that come across very naturally as in a relationship. And so it was really disappointing that they didn't choose to go that way with the major characters.
Yeah. They had to insert the case of the not gays.
We've talked about that before.
With Poe.
And Finn. With, him looking for Rose, him, the way he would look towards Rose, the way he would look towards that other, the black character.
Oh, the other former stormtrooper.
Yes, the other former, they kind of made them seem like they might be, and then there was also there's also that kind of, is there or isn't there between Finn and Rey.
Right.
And so it's like...
But then Poe does this look to
Zori
Bliss. He's like, hey, let's get together kind of look. And she's like, no. So there's the case of the not gays, thus cementing that Poe is straight, so whew, we're safe now.
Yes.
You know?
And I just don't understand why this is so hard for JJ. Yeah. I mean, the writing actually was good. You wouldn't have even had to do anything really extra. I mean, we could have just had, like they did the kiss with the lesbians. You could have just done that. And we already had the romance. We already had the communication. We had the silent communication between the two. They had the ability to kind of read each other.
Yeah.
Like a couple does.
Yeah.
So that was really disappointing.
Yeah.
That's, not unexpected because, that's what we've come to expect from J.J. Abrams. And, I mean, that goes back to Felicity. My understanding is that the only gay characters in Felicity were because the network told him he had to have characters in the show. Other than that, he just avoids us at all cost. And now he got enough, feedback that he had to have representation. So he's like, okay, I'll throw this in. It's really frustrating that in 2019 that we're still there.
Yeah.
And it's, and it's really sad because in this particular story, there is a lot of representation, right? You have women empowerment, you have people of color being really represented, and to have people of color represented in a positive gay light, that's also something that's really rare. So to have had Finn and Poe, with Finn being a gay character, as a positive gay male character, that would have been a huge representation, not just for the gay community, but also within the black community as well. So I feel like that was a really missed opportunity from both Disney and from J.J. Abrams.
Definitely.
And they did such a good job of writing the characters. I don't know why they felt that they couldn't do it. We're going to have completely forgotten something, and then we're going to be kicking ourselves in the butt later going, why didn't we include that?
Is The Rise of Skywalker a great movie?
No.
No, it's not a great movie. It is fun. It is entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
And it has some great action sequences. The fight between Kylo and Rey, the lightsaber fight, is great. That desert planet where the chase, they were on these vehicles, like these skiff-like vehicles, the chase, that's pretty cool. Oh, that was a funny line when the jet troopers start flying and then 3PO goes, they fly now?
And they all continued that line of...
And they're like, they fly now!
They fly now!
That was funny. I really liked that. It had some really funny scenes. I do love the characters, Finn and Poe and Rey.
And
They
Rose.
are some fun characters. Rose not really in the movie that much. So she really didn't have that much to do, unfortunately. Which is sad because they introduce her in The Last Jedi and... They start something, like, between her and Finn, and then completely ignore it in this one. And she's barely in the movie.
Yeah. What is sad about the whole thing with Rose is that again goes back to the stuff that they set off with the Last Jedi, is that, here are all these common people that are going to do extraordinary things. And then we just don't get much from her in this movie.
And they drop it. So that's something that was disappointing.
Yeah. And we love Rose. We feel for her and all the hate she got. That was so unfair.
Yeah.
Tran received all that hate. Yeah. That was unfair.
At least the arc for Kylo Ren was good. I like the resolution of his redemption arc.
And that he gave his life to save Rey.
Yeah, he basically, he finally reverted back to Ben, helped Rey fight Palpatine. I thought that was great. The Rise of Skywalker is very entertaining, and I would recommend it.
But yeah, just know that especially if you're like me, and I'm a huge fan, I still consider The Last Jedi to be my favorite of all 9 of the movies. There's going to be points that are disappointing to you. Although if you're a fanboy who hated The Last Jedi, you're probably going to be one who goes, oh my god, this is the best movie ever.
Most likely, yeah.
Although some of them will still hate it because they're still strong female characters. And you killed off all the originals. I had a student who goes, did Luke Skywalker come back? And I'm like,
you're like, yeah?
Yes.
As a Force Ghost?
As a Force Ghost. He didn't come back to life. I said, he died. He's not coming back.
So, Gary, would you recommend The Rise of Skywalker?
I would still recommend The Rise of Skywalker.
I would recommend The Rise of Skywalker. It's exciting, it's funny, it's thrilling, it's fun. Check it out. Thank you for watching Star Wars Obsessed. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and click subscribe. If you want to be alerted to new videos, hit that bell icon. And you can follow me on Instagram. And if you want to be obsessed, just like me, and share your obsession, check out my Facebook page at Star Wars Obsessed. See you on the next video.
Bye.
Bye. I never know how to end my videos. Thank you.